Yo, welcome back to another episode of Mailbag Monday on the Money Matters podcast. I am your host, Jack. I am joined by my father, Bill, and my chief of staff, Dylan. Gentlemen, how are we?
Oh, excellent.
Look at that.
Excellent. Happy having.
Yeah, happy having everyone.
Happy
What a great
having. Happy
weekend.
having. We are recording at Bitcoin block 840,234. So we are 234 blocks post halving, entering this new epoch, which we will talk about in a bit. First and foremost, who sponsors the podcast? Nobody. We support this podcast on our own, and we do it because we enjoy it. We've been in Bitcoin for over a decade at this point, for the large majority of its existence. And we like shooting the shit with you guys and with each other. So this podcast is not influenced or sponsored by anyone else. This is pure, authentic, hopefully relatable and enjoyable conversation about Bitcoin. It will always be that way. If you do want to support us, you can use Strike. That's a company I founded. What we do is Bitcoin. We're a regulated global Bitcoin financial service provider. You need to buy it. You need to sell it. You need to use it. You need to store it. You need to use the Lightning Network. You need an API. That's what we do. So if you want to support us, you can download Strike. If you're in Europe, I already put on the internet, you'll be able to download it this week. I won't say the day, but we are coming to Europe, which is really exciting. Okay, with that intro, did I miss anything else, Dill, before we kick it to Dollar Bill?
No, let's go.
All right. As you guys know, we got a Dollar Bill segment from my dad, and then we have one topic that we spend the episode talking about. Today, that topic will be this upcoming epoch, the halving. So we'll reminisce on the last 4 years, the last epoch of Bitcoin's life, and then we'll forward look into this upcoming epoch. But before we do, we have the Dollar Bill segment from the man himself. I don't know if people are keeping track of these Dollar Bill segments, but they've been pretty accurate. I remember you were like, well, Bitcoin looks like a bit of a crowded trade. Elevator isn't this big. And boom, it crashes down to 59K. These have been shockingly accurate. So what's going on with the price of Bitcoin in the financial markets? Are we going to World War III? Dollar Bill, Mr. Bill.
Oh, I mean, 64.7 is fine. No, I mean, I could just say the same thing always. Whether it's, every time I turn on financial cable, whether it's Fidelity, BlackRock, at all, it's a little, like I said, it's easier to trade Bitcoin aggressively when everyone thought we were crazy. Now that everybody has accepted this asset and there's a lot of Wall Street sales efforts behind it, yeah, that's a little uncomfortable, right? This was an easier market when it had so much skepticism. That doesn't mean it can't go higher, but like I said, I would expect this to get a little more frustrating, false breakouts, lack of follow through, range bound, right, until everybody, loses interest and moves on to the next hot market. That's the way I would be looking. I would expect this as a range bound trade. I have no problem taking profits at big round numbers like 70s, sure, in retrospect. But yeah, I know. There's a lot of credible people now that we are post halving, and there is, a lot of institutional demand. It could leak out the high end of the range. I'm all in favor of that. But no, I am expecting a range bound affair for the time being.
Fair enough. Is the halving priced in? Couldn't say that with a straight face. Sorry, go ahead.
You don't even know what that means, but I always say there are two things about that is, yeah, there are going to be more Bitcoin created every 10 minutes after the halving. We're not running out of Bitcoin. We haven't halved the existing supply. You're having the new issuance. You're just really, and I know I've never really felt deflation is the right word for that. Deflating, shrinking, right? You're deflating the level of new issuance, but we're still adding more Bitcoin. with all of, the new on-ramps, financial products, as well as the occasional nation state, as well as whoever Mr. 100 is. Isn't there somebody on the blockchain? People have noticed that just repeats buying 100, I don't know, daily or, so whoever is buying, you got to find that. The new issuance, I don't believe, just round number wise, I don't believe new issuance can satisfy the demand. So you got to get it from, there's a lot of guys, that have been long for 6, 8, 10 years that, are looking to take some profits. But their new issuance is not going to cover the amount of demand. Price is going to have to solve that problem. I'm like I said, trade from the long side, which I have been doing right ever since I've found Bitcoin. I think it just gets a little easier. I consider it a market with less room for error. If anything happens, major retailer, like I said, a nation state, a big marketing effort from Wall Street, there's just less room. There's less overhead. And price is going to have to solve that problem.
Yeah, the block reward is 3.125 Bitcoin. It's roughly 450 Bitcoin a day. Mr. 100, whoever this person is taking 25% of new issuance a day, and he's one guy. That's insane.
I know it's funny, and it is a lot of fun. I'm glad you guys get exposure to a market with so much transparency, because figuring out like who was behind, somebody would come in, buy 1 million bushels of soybeans, but you could give that up through other houses. You could sneak it. You could do it, exchange for physicals. You could do it, at a cash desk and exchange it for a futures contract. There's ways of sneaking around what it is you're trying to do. But there really isn't in Bitcoin. You got, other than it's pseudonymous, we don't know, specifically who it is. We know exactly what he's doing, how many are in his wallet. That's really a lot of fun. The entertainment, right? The popcorn part of this. I think now that we've halved and there's that type of demand that lurks out there, it's gonna be a fun market. And like I said, I think price is the only way to solve that problem. Other than China bans Bitcoin, right? I suppose you could try to solve that problem the Jamie Dimon way and just send the IRS after us. But I think that ship has sailed, right? I just think, having enough said.
Yeah. Bitcoin's price goes up when there's more demand, of course. So the more people that want Bitcoin. But I love how you talk about it like being an inventory reduction almost, is that when that new demand shows up, whatever it is, there's World War III, there's a nation state, there's more people that just read about it, listen to this podcast, there's less inventory for the market to chew through before the price has to start going higher. Because Bitcoin, the only natural seller in Bitcoin are the miners. So there's a cost to make more Bitcoins. That's known as a commodity premium. It can't be free to make money, right? So there's a cost to mine the Bitcoin, and the miners sell the Bitcoin and to finance that cost. And so they're always selling. They're the only natural seller in the market. And so you're just reducing the inventory that the natural seller can sell. So we'll see if demand continues to increase. Yeah, we all suspect demand to increase for a variety of reasons, and people hold their different opinions, whether it's retail or nation state or the liquidity or the government deficit. But as long as the demand increases, then Bitcoin's going to have to find a higher price. That's just how the math works out.
Yeah, new issuance halvings. I sound like I'm saying the same thing. You've been in markets, right, since I got out of high school in the 70s. What happens when we reduce, like when we grow 50% less soybeans? That never happens, ever. But this is also, it's planned as a part of the protocol. But a drought or a supply reduction of a new commodity, of a fungible commodity, is not planned. But this has been a part of it, so arguably should be more priced in. But no, supply shocks in markets. I have never seen a 50% supply reduction, and I don't So I have nothing in my experience that tells you how far price is going to have to go to solve that problem. But I know I hang around with a lot of Bitcoiners, and I'll bet I think the only way to solve that problem, right, if new issuance doesn't cover the demand, is to pry it out of hands. And there's a lot of us in multi-sig relationships, right, that can't even sell it to you if I wanted to. I've done my estate planning. So no, I think the only way to solve that problem is, now that new issuance has been halved, is higher prices.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes people make markets too complicated. If you just think about it, if you want a lot of Bitcoin at 65,000 and there's none for sale, okay, well, how about 66,000? How about 67,000? And eventually the holders will put it on sale.
And about reducing the new issuance more gradually and more frequently? How about annual slight reductions rather than quadrennial out of left field reductions? Satoshi, he clearly knows he needs speculative capital to get his project off the ground. He's courting us. He talks, give it a try, it might work, or divide the world's wealth. And if it is a one world currency, you could make the argument that the world's wealth, divide 21 million into it and make wild price predictions and all that. I mean, he's clearly enticing us, but halvings, that'll get the speculators' attention and get the project off the ground.
Yeah, this is also a cool moment for humanity as a whole, because as far as I'm concerned, Bitcoin is the first money that we all have access to where its new issuance rate is less than 1% of its total supply, which is pretty cool. So that's also known as the stock to flow ratio. All that means is the existing stockpile of Bitcoins versus the amount of new Bitcoins that are produced. That ratio is greatly in favor of those that hold it, because there's just so little being produced compared to how much is already out in the world. So that's a ratio that's kind of interesting to look at. Like the stock to flow ratio of the dollar, for example, is not very good, because after COVID, we created 25% of all existing dollars like in 6 months or something. So there's a lot of flow compared to the existing stockpile. Something like gold, I think gold's stock to flow is like 60 or something like that. So gold, there are plenty of new gold that's mined every single year. But Bitcoin becomes the hardest money according to that numerical metric that we've all had access to ever. So take it for what it's worth, but that's a pretty cool milestone to be alive for. I mean,
the other thing that I think is going to be more and more interesting is that I did not expect. Who had a Bitcoiner in the White House or at or around it, right? Or at least advising it. We got a good chain. We got a lot of politicians talking about Bitcoin, which I didn't expect this. Like I said, what do you think would come first, right? A major online retailer adopting and promoting or even discounting it, to get their customer, to incent their customers, or, right, a major political party, talking about it. I didn't think you'd get politicians, but I know Bitcoin's on the issue list for these debates, right?
Totally. Yeah. So happy halving. And with that, let's probably get into just talking about the last epoch we just lived through and then the upcoming one. So for those that aren't aware, just kidding.
Before we do, can I just ask one question? About the halving specifically, I saw a transaction that was mined in the halving block that was a 71-cent transaction that someone paid $500,000 in fees. What is the logic? Like, why would anyone do that? Do you want to be a part of history and that's the cost, or
You just want to be in that block.
Yeah, it was a 71-cent transaction that they paid $500,000 in fees to have mined in the halving block. Like, why the fuck would anyone do that?
I think it was not to be a part of the block. I think it was all the shitcoinery that's going on in Bitcoin, like the inscription, rare sats.
Oh, I didn't even think of that because that's so far out of my mind. Like, I just don't care about what is it, like ordinals or whatever.
I mean, I don't know, but that's my guess. The only way to find out is to ask the person that made the transaction. But I think that there's a community of people that prescribe value to specific sats as if it's a collectible item, which it's not. That's made up. But I guess someone thought that that sat in that block would be worth more than the fee they paid, in theory. I have no idea if they're right or wrong, but sounds like fool's game. Try and sell people shit. I don't know, though. I mean, I don't even value like, oh, being in this block. Like, doesn't matter. So I personally prescribe no value to that. I have no idea why someone would do that.
I was just curious your opinion. Okay.
Anything, no matter how illogical or stupid or wasteful, if it benefits miners, I'm always been in favor of it. You guys want to just screw something up and show the mining community a little love. I know people, the miner, how would you like to be a miner? All you ever do is get complained and bitched about. Fees are too high, network's too congested, everything's too slow. People are adding gobbledygook to it. Yeah, some miner got a huge fee just so for a vanity, including an empty block and a round number, or an empty addition into a round number. I'm in favor.
Yeah. The coolest part too is Bitcoin just works. So I don't have to care about what people are doing. And there's not really that much room for debate. I mean, we can argue about whether people should do it or not, but the rules are the rules. People can follow the rules. I've said before on other shows or panels and stuff of the people that are paying thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars for a picture of a cat on the blockchain. And like, people are, what do you think about that? I don't know. Point that guy out in the crowd. I'll shake his hand. Thank you for helping secure my net worth by paying six figures for a cat. I mean, I don't think it's financially sustainable. Eventually, you know, that guy's going to run out of money buying cats. But sure, you know, if he's real proud about his cats, good for you, man. I mean, I could never, you know, so I don't know. It just doesn't matter. I don't think it really matters. I don't know why it's so funny, Dylan. It just doesn't matter, what people are doing. My node validates that everyone's following the rules. As long as you're following the rules, I don't give a shit. You like cats, go for it. You know.
Yeah.
That guy will. There is no such thing as running out of money. I suppose if we keep printing enough money, there will be somebody somewhere who'll pay $1 million to put a picture of something.
Yeah, well, the problem, I mean, maybe this has potential to go on a little bit of a tangent. The problem with printing money is you turn everyone into a speculator. When the money's good, then society can work hard, get paid in good money. That money will last you a long time. It won't get inflated against the things that you need to buy. And you can go focus on building families and relationships with each other and contributing to the world. When the money's not good, you work hard, you get paid in something that isn't storing your value, that's melting away, that if you hold it, you get less groceries, you get less housing, you get less stuff. And so then you're naturally a panicked speculator. So you're always constantly needing to speculate on where to put your wealth because the money's bad. And so you have a society that we live in today where the reproduction rate is down, the divorce rate is up, the age at which people get married is way higher. People are less focused on building family, on building relationships, and on contributing to the world. And they're more focused on speculating to try and preserve their wealth. And so you've got people gambling and investing in all sorts of stupid things. But that's just what happens when the money's not very good, unfortunately, is it makes the world a way worse place because all of us have to spend so much time and energy trying to maintain and persist our wealth as opposed to building strong families and being really good at our jobs. That's the fix the money, fix the world. But yeah, if you're going to print a lot of money and turn everyone into a speculator, you will find some weird motherfucker that's willing to gamble on cats. Just the reality of the situation. I do think that that's also why you see Bitcoiners get into Bitcoin, and then every aspect of their life seems to change and enhance as well. Because if your money's good and you are no longer a speculator because you just work hard and you save in Bitcoin, you have a lot more time to focus on your health, on your relationships, on your family, and on your craft. The whole point of having money in solving for the coincidence of wants, solving for barter, is so that we can hyper specialize and be really good at really niche things. Like after this, when I want to go get a steak from Whole Foods, I can't walk into Whole Foods and say, "Hey, guess what? I'll work on launching Strike Europe tonight for 2 steaks." That guy doesn't take my work on Strike as a currency, right? And so, because we have money, we get to all focus on really niche things like building something like Strike. And so, when the money's good, you get to focus on yourself and focus on your family. And so that's why I think Bitcoiners are the ones that have really, really crazy, cool health regimens and insights into longevity and are reproducing and building family and are able to hyper focus and build amazing products and amazing companies. So just a little insight. I don't think the speculation will last forever. I do think Bitcoin will help remove it. That's why I'm not bullish on shitcoins. Shitcoins are exactly that. It's society's need to speculate through hyperinflation debasement of fiat currencies. They're not, I don't think they're long-term. So that's why I think shitcoins will die, and even investing in real estate, Robinhood, things like that. I think give it, I don't know. What do you guys think? 5, 10, 20 years? How long do you think before Bitcoin is adopted enough that the innate desire and need to speculate constantly is dialed back?
I'm amazed it's come so far. I mean, it was, what, $1.5 trillion market from a for the first, it didn't have a dollar of value for the first 2 years of the protocol, right? And it's come an awful long way. So, no, Bitcoin could easily double, quadruple, in, I'd say, the coming years.
Yeah, I mean, 5,
5, sure.
is it 20 years from now? It's 5 halvings from now. I mean, I'd like to think the price is a bit more stable in terms of volatility at that point, right? I mean, from an issuance perspective, what is that, like less than a Bitcoin a block at that point?
Well, stable, measured in what? Probably, yeah, I have no idea. I mean, for Bitcoin to be stable, it has to demonetize everything else, you know? And so I don't know, if it's not done demonetizing real estate, it's not going to be stable. I do think that we have a lot longer to go, but I do wonder, I mean, people aren't stupid. So like Bitcoin adoption is very, it's very aggressive. It's very honest. Like, people aren't stupid in the sense that if you see someone that's using good money, which means they're going to have a better focus on their own life, better family relationships, better health, and better wealth, and they're going to have better stuff. They're going to have more housing than you. They're going to have more groceries than you. They're going to have more energy than you. They're going to have more cars than you. They're going to have more family than you. They're going to have more everything than you. People aren't stupid. They're going to adopt that thing, you know? So that's how I look at Bitcoin adoption today, is like, oh, how'd you get that house? Oh, I'm in Bitcoin. How many times you got to hear that before you get in Bitcoin yourself? Oh man, you're getting grass-fed ribeyes. I'm eating McDonald's. How you affording that? Oh, I'm in Bitcoin. Oh wow, you got in really great shape. Where'd you learn that? Oh, through Bitcoin. So people aren't stupid. So I just wonder how long it's going to take before people act in their own self-interest, solve a lot of their problems. I don't know. And where you would realize that is, yeah, like a lot less speculation, constant speculation, a lot more saving. So a lot of the penny stock activity, shit coining and stuff. I don't know. I would say maybe like 5 to 20 years, somewhere in there. 5 sounds really aggressive. 20 sounds like a long time. We'll see. It's my guess.
I like that range. I'm just trying to think of any type of analogy. I know coming out of the 70s, nobody wanted to touch, the stock market. It was hard assets, metals, real estate. The 70s were famous for inflationary excess, and the 80s were famous for everyone being very skeptical that Ronald Reagan was going to, change that. And that took, I would say it went from, me, getting out of high school and entering financial markets in the late 70s, early 80s. It probably took a good 10 years until by the time you were through the 87 crash and into the 90s, the stock market was pretty much considered solid, right? You didn't have to, so I don't know, 10, 15 years before, if you're envisioning a future where everyone just has some type of hard assets in the same way, I don't know, like maybe in generations prior, everybody had some precious metals just because you didn't trust what government, depending on how solvent your government was. I'd say, I know that's a wide range, somewhere between 5 and 20 years, but yeah, where Bitcoin is just kind of a boring and stable part, and it's used, right? It's reference. You leverage it for, you guys want your spring break vacation, you can borrow against it, or 5 to 20. I'll go with that.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I don't think the idea of, I don't know, like Bitcoin's not like a company in the sense that you don't need to market it. Like when people are like, how are you going to get the rest of the world to adopt Bitcoin? Like, I'm not. The rest, I don't have to do anything. The rest of the world's going to adopt Bitcoin because they're not stupid. Because if you hold one currency, if you hold the dollar, you have less time with your family, your friends, you get divorced, you don't reproduce, you're poor. If you hold this thing, you have more time with family, more time to reproduce, you're wealthy, you have a beautiful home. So it's like, I don't have to do anything. No one, it's not like, convincing people to get the new iPhone. It's very different. It's like, you just get to opt in and live that's the other thing too, is, we don't have to go protest outside the Fed, like, stop printing dollars. And I don't need to convince any of my friends to get in on this Bitcoin thing with me. It's just a beautiful solution that solves your individual problem, and people are going to adopt it because they aren't stupid. I think that's the best part. It's very peaceful. It's not, not violent. There's no marching around, and it doesn't rely on other people necessarily buying in. I mean, in theory, you can't be the only Bitcoiner in the world, but at this point, with over $1 trillion market cap, it's plenty big and liquid. Anyone who wants to opt in and have a better life, more than welcome. Cool. All right. Oh, were you going to say something?
No, I just said, if you're talking about how this unfolds, I think before before you have any confidence in anybody's prediction, just ask yourself what you as soon as you heard of Bitcoin, you were probably thinking, I'll bet you Saquon Barkley would like, I'll bet you El Salvador. There's where I think it. No, of course not. Nobody saw either of those things coming. The more normal point of progression, you would think, well, it was never surprising that all the Chicago exchanges adopted it and then developed derivative products of it, because currency trading, has been markets. We've had currency markets for 50 years, and the liquidity and the expertise to price assets like this. So that was unsurprising. But the complete lack of retail adoption, and like I say, El Salvador was I think a shock. Amazon, eBay, that I'm surprised that there's been so little progress there. I don't know, but I know I'm giving you guys I like that range because you almost can't be wrong. Somewhere between 5 and 20 years before Bitcoin becomes that, the stable asset as a part of the menu with better on ramps, clearer taxation. I know that's a wide range, but I think we need a couple more cycles at least.
Well, my logic and how I arrived at that number is I do think with the global debt to GDP, the deficit that all these governments are in, they're going to have to print currency over the next 2 years. It's just math. And that will create another cycle where Bitcoin will drop another 80%. Like I think Bitcoin can go to 1 million in the next 18 months and then crash all the way down to like 200K. But I don't think we'll see a super cycle or like no more bear markets because of the amount of money printing that's going to have to happen, in my opinion. And that's just, they got to bail out the bond market. They have to solve this problem. All the banks are underwater, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But after that, it kind of almost leaves room for, in my opinion, shit coins and a lot of the low hanging fruit level of speculative activity due to fiat debasement to start to wind down. Like, I don't think Bitcoin's going to dematerialize real estate or the S&P 500 anytime soon, but how much longer are people going to buy a shit coin and get rug pulled versus just opt into Bitcoin? I don't know. After this next money printing extravaganza, I expect to be so big, so outrageous. Everyone knows what inflation is, and they're going to have to let it run hot. America's going to have inflation numbers that like Nigeria had a decade ago, where that we would all like, we would react like that. That's what we're going to be living through in like New York City. And I think it's just going to be that bad, where a lot of the really low hanging fruit stuff, not real estate, but like Dogecoin, I would expect that's my logic. And so I think I think everything will be in a bull run in the next 24 months, everything, because of the amount of money printing. So the value of your house is going to go up. The value of your stock portfolio is going to go up. Bitcoin's going to go up the most, but everything's going to go up in dollar terms. And then there will be a bear market. Like all that money printing is going to have to, there'll be a hangover. And then that's where I get my 5 to 20. After that, I think you'll start to, like eat like Ethereum. Like how long can Ethereum like keep pivoting? No, seriously. But I mean, there's enough like speculative need to give it a try, but eventually the value's got to be real or not. I think you start to see it in 5 years.
Hey, if somebody put you in charge of this government's financial, monetary situation, would you rather have double-digit inflation or bank lines? I mean, you get voted out of office if you let either of those situations, but the problem with bank lines is you found, did you know what SVB stood for? But it was only like those insolvencies that trigger larger liquidations and drag the stock market down. I didn't know. I don't have any money at Silicon Valley Bank. I don't know where it is or what they do. But you do have exposure, and you're gonna have exposure to the next, financial mishap. And I just don't think you're right. I mean, the only way a policymaker can do that, would you rather deal with heading into whatever it is, an election year, or even if you're a Federal Reserve official, you got to serve at the pleasure of the next administration. You want to head into that with, I think you're going to have to lean one way or the other to get out of this, to get out of this level of indebtedness. Personally, I'd rather have inflation.
Inflation, you get to
supply chain disruptions, war in Ukraine.
Exactly.
I can scapegoat it better, but bank lines, you just mismanage something. If you're regulating those things now, wait a minute. I remember when, my grandparents used to use expressions like money in the bank. What is that now? No, I'll much take inflation over the insolvency risk.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, it's like you said, it's easier to scapegoat, or I don't think it's easy at all, but that's been their game plan for a long time. The only reason they're in such a peculiar spot is how aggressive they were post-COVID. I mean, the dollar's been rotting for quite some time now. Some say since 1971, but in practice, probably before that.
I have said this before, but I do. I think one of the really jarring macroeconomic developments of this of recent past is stimulus checks. What? Like, I think just the average guy, if I'm going to mail you, I'm just going to mail you out $300. That 300 came from something, right? Didn't you liquidate something? Or now you got to tighten your belt a little bit here before you mail out everybody? No, we just mail it on out. Why not mail another one? I got to write. Why not do that every month? I mean, that I think, how now every politician knows he's got that in his toolkit. If Putin does something, or a financial market freezes, the Fed hikes too aggressively, everybody, you never knew you had that one, but now I can do that. I can just call for more stimulus money. Who's going to vote against that? I mean, I just think in when it comes to greasing the skids on the dollar, that's about that. I think is top of the list for how do you get the world to lose confidence in your currency and just debase it? Yeah, just start mailing it to everyone.
Yeah, there's no narrative to
Right.
me with bank lines. There's a narrative with inflation, and I think, unfortunately, my belief in a post-COVID world is that as long as you have the right people saying things, people will believe what they're told to believe. And so inflation in the double digits will just become something that was someone else's fault, and it's super unfortunate, but you're going to have to deal with it, and we're fixing it, right? We're don't worry about it. We got it. We're fixing it. And people will believe what they're told and say, okay, thank you. I will now pay $20 for a dozen eggs. Sorry to bother you.
Right. And just hope y'all don't drive through this country and realize that we also grow wheat. It's not just the Ukraine. There's plenty of it in Nebraska, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana. And just hope that you guys aren't paying any attention when you drive your kid to college. I don't know how you get away with blaming inflation on supply chains and a distant war when the inflation is hitting in things that this country just obviously excels at.
Yeah. I mean, going back to people aren't stupid and Bitcoin's going to get adopted because people aren't stupid. What do you guys think your stimulus? So if you took your stimulus check, which the actual number was $1,200, everyone in America got $1,200 stimmy check. If you took your check,
I don't mean to interrupt, but there's this brilliant green and mallard duck, and every time he comes, Brooke and I like nicknaming him the Good Luck Duck, because whenever he arrives, it's not very often. Whenever he hangs out in our yard, some type of good luck follows. So just wanted to let your viewers know my duck has arrived. He is my lucky charm.
wait.
I just bought more Bitcoin.
You gotta take a picture.
We'll put this duck to the test. We'll put this duck to the test.
No, I was gonna ask you guys if you took your $1,200 stimmy check on April 15th, 2020, and you bought Bitcoin with it. What do you think it's worth today?
What is it, 8 or 9? No.
One was,
yeah, 8.
We know
8K,
it's
9.
doubled. Yeah, I'd say four times.
It's now
No,
worth. Oh, go ahead.
It wasn't that
because
long.
wasn't Bitcoin at like, what is it, 16K then or something?
No, like 5,000 or something.
When they were mailing out stimulus checks?
Yeah, it crashed in March when COVID hit, like down to 3,700.
I couldn't remember it.
Your stimulus check would be worth $11,664, almost a 10x. And so I'm just saying, people aren't stupid. Think about Michael Saylor. Michael Saylor turned his business from a market cap of 500 million to a market cap of 35 billion. How'd he do that? Bitcoin. People aren't stupid. El Salvador went from one of the most feared countries in the world, one of the poorest, one of the most criminal with the highest murder rate to one of the best, most favorable murder rate, one of the highest tourist attractions, one of the most now popular up and coming Latin American countries in the world. How'd they do that? Bitcoin. People aren't stupid. Countries aren't stupid. Corporations aren't stupid. Individuals aren't stupid. So yes, your $1,200 stimulus check, if you put it into better money than the dollar, would be worth almost 12 grand. So there's that for inflation. People aren't stupid. Kind of transitioning this into the topic that I wanted to spend at least a little bit of time about is these epochs. So the last epoch, for those that aren't aware, when we say epoch, we're saying between halvings. So we, as Bitcoiners, we say that Bitcoin has these epochs. So we went from the initial halving, which was in 2012, the very first one, where Bitcoin went from 50 Bitcoins every block to 25. And the next one in 2016, from 25 to 12 and a half. Then the next one in 2020, from 12 and a half to 6.25. And then now it's 3.125. And so the 2016 to 2020 was my first full epoch, right? I believe. And I think the last one, we've talked about it plenty, where we had El Salvador, Michael Saylor, ETFs. I don't know if you guys have any favorite moments from the last epoch, but what I am kind of excited about is to talk about this upcoming one. Any bold predictions? Like, for example, I thought watching Bitcoin trade around these like Iran, Israel war missile things was fascinating to me, because Bitcoin's the only 24/7 liquid free market available to everyone on planet Earth. And so I'm starting to get the sense that Bitcoin's going to be this source of truth for the world on a macroeconomic level this epoch. That's like one of my predictions, is that when the world wants to see if something's good or bad, they're going to look at the Bitcoin price based on news. And news usually drops on weekends, or news usually drops on aftermarket hours. And instead of having to understand how the market's going to open or understand if someone actually launched a missile or not, I think that the world is going to start using Bitcoin to proxy that, and I think we're already starting to see that. So that's like one example. But I don't know. Do you guys have any favorite moments from the last epoch, or any bold predictions for this upcoming one, next 4 years?
Cookie?
I'll go first. Previous epoch, by far and away, El Salvador. I think that's one of the most historic moments Bitcoin will ever see. And uniquely, we were positioned to witness that in real time. And I think that was one of the most beautiful moments Bitcoin will ever see. I was trying to think about this question in terms of trying to come up with some sort of left field narrative, because I think more nation state adoption is inevitable, especially in emerging economies. I think El Salvador laid out a great blueprint for that. I think there will be another MicroStrategy emerging. I mean, there's no way all of these sort of zombie S&P 500 companies are sitting there watching what Michael Saylor's done, and there's no one in a boardroom right now cooking up a plan. But I think one interesting angle potentially would be like that we see a renewable energy renaissance led by primarily Bitcoin, because mining in theory supports the idea that acquiring energy for as cheap as possible, right? And so the case for renewable energy sort of exploding in terms of adoption or innovation to support mining, or read a different way, the acquisition of new money. I don't know. I don't think in this epoch we see the idea of Bitcoin as a tool for transaction, for example, out generating or creating more interest in its store of value narrative. And so, I don't personally spend the thing that has asymmetrical upside and only goes up. I spend the thing that systematically is broken and provably loses value every year, and that's the dollar. I don't spend my Bitcoin, I spend dollars. And so I think it's interesting. Things like nuclear offers uninterrupted energy flow for a money that operates 24/7. I don't know. That's kind of my left field prediction, is that we see a renewable energy renaissance led by interest in Bitcoin mining.
That'd be nice. Yeah, I'm looking out. I'm looking at offshore drilling, and there's typically at least one of them flaring, and it's like, okay, you guys are just throwing that money into the ocean right now. Yeah, I think it's energy efficiency is definitely. No, I'd say that if you want any comment on, wrap up this epoch, and it is you guys going forward. If you remember, there certainly weren't a lot of educational podcasts, and there weren't a lot of books on the subject. You really had to learn at the meetup level. That's where you built the position, and that's where you asked questions. And you would show up at a meetup, just in our front room, and there'd be a rep from CME would be there. There'd be another dad. Like, I've been hearing this from my kid. I got to educate myself. There'd be Andreas would just show up, right? I mean, that's gonna, and I don't think that's gonna happen going forward. There's too many other good resources you can use to educate yourself and build the position. ETF, obviously much better on ramps, but neither of those things existed in the last epoch. And I think it's gonna be a different feel, right? Because if you wanted to educate yourself about this, like, think, what do you want to invest in? If there's an opportunity, are you going to go to a local level, kick the tires, talk to, people who are, educated about it? No, you're going to access through your financial institution or through, the internet or something. That was a very unique bootstrappy feel to Bitcoin. And I think it's just not going to feel the same way any longer. It was pretty wild, though. You got to admit, you just show up and you go, yeah, there'd be a bunch of guys that don't know nothing, and then there'd be Andreas, right, who would give, you stumbled into one of his really trenchant thoughts on monetary policy and evolution, and his family's history with currency disruptions. Those are really interesting. And where's this thing going? And then, like I said, there'd be a member of a rep from SIBO, a rep from CME, reps. It was that type of excitement. I don't think or that type of grassroots feel, I don't think is going to exist going forward. I think, this is just, the asset has grown up a little regrettable, but it's going to be a lot easier to educate yourself and get long going forward.
Yep. Agree. I agree. I also built Strike in the last epoch. That's another thing that came out of the epoch. So I don't know what that means in this next upcoming one, but that was one I was just thinking. I was like, man, what has happened since 2020? And I was like, oh, well, Strike happened. A lot has happened. It's interesting too that Bitcoin, because that was like our new year basically that we just celebrated, and Bitcoin years are 4 years, which I think is hilarious for human years because it's accidentally really low time preference, just literally slows time down.
No, yeah, you are right. Cookies putting notes on the margins. You cannot talk about the last 4 years, or you can't summarize that epoch without talking about SBF and the SEC. Those were two. Now they fight from the SEC, and I like to think of SBF as kind of the last, like, Carpellus type. Remember, there are a lot of names that did not
think the last
like what?
The last, you think? Is that a bold? That's a bold
Yeah.
prediction. You think that no one else is going to blow up like that?
I just think that when venture capitals put in material amounts, I like when what was it, Union Square put $3 million into Coinbase. That, in my mind, separated them from the Mt. Goxes and all those Eastern European exchanges, because, well, how? Well, somebody must have done some due diligence before putting that type of commitment in, because the rest of us are just trying to read tea leaves to see who's going to be solvent. I mean, it was unclear whether Mt. Gox was any good or not, because we had industry leaders vouching for Carpellus. So I don't know. I think that's over now. I think on-ramps are more mature, and you're not going to have to, like I say, hunch your way through the position. You're going to be able to access through ETFs, access through, larger trusted financial institutions. And the education rate is night and day. It was really hard to understand Bitcoin in the early days, a lot of misinformation. And now, I mean, the resources like this podcast didn't exist 10 years ago, right? The only podcast we had was like a guy in a top hat, like a mad Bitcoins or something. I don't want to criticize those guys, but it was more of a circus carnival feel, and not, a financial asset feel that it's going to have going forward.
Yeah, I just think unfortunately SBFs and BlockFis and Doquans come from money printing. I do think we're going to get a ton of venture capital money because a bunch of rich people are going to get richer due to money printing. So they're going to give some fund $500 million to invest, and that fund is going to need to invest. That's the interesting thing about venture capital is these guys get paid to spend money as fast as they possibly can. So you're going to get people, when someone makes a venture capital investment, it's actually not like the one investment of their life that they get to make. And they did so much diligence. They need to make like 1,000 a month. And so they're just like, oh, I don't know, this might work. Maybe I have no fucking idea. And just spraying checks all over the place. So I do think you'll get more shit coins, more VC investing in shit that doesn't work. I don't know if you'll get an SBF level. I mean, he was bigger than any fraudster that had ever lived, right? He's like the biggest fraudster in the history of mankind, until Vitalik gets caught. Yeah, Vitalik will win that crown whenever ETH falls apart. I don't know if anyone will beat him there in being a bigger fraudster, but I don't know. With the level of money printing I'm expecting, you're going to get wonky shit in this market, in the world at large. Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think of any crazy bold predictions. I do expect more countries to adopt Bitcoin. I do expect more corporations to adopt Bitcoin. I think, Dylan, you talked about not spending your Bitcoin because it goes up, spending the dollars. So as everyone knows, I only own Bitcoin. I don't own any dollars. So I have to spend Bitcoin because it's the only money I own. I expect to see more of that, actually. I do think people will use Bitcoin as their base currency more and more. I'm excited to launch products around that at Strike. I do think it could become a viral trend of just living on Bitcoin while the government prints the most money they've ever printed in the history of the dollar. I'd be curious if we have products in market and an ecosystem that can service customers doing that, why you wouldn't just get your paycheck in Bitcoin and live month to month on Bitcoin. I expect that to be much more of a trend. But yeah, I'm not sure. We'll see. I was going to say maybe a central bank adds Bitcoin to its balance sheet. But I'm not sure. If that happens, it'll be such an irrelevant one. So make that prediction.
Well, they all own gold, right? And
yeah,
they're, like I said, I don't know who's running your country's monetary policy, but the price of gold in dollars has doubled. And it yields nothing. You got to pay to store it, and there's oodles of it. And you guys managed to double it. I think that's about, there are lots of people like reading lots of indicators, money supply numbers, are issued, or obviously inflation data. My number one is always the price of gold. If you want to know how the market feels about the job your country is doing, because during robust financial times, gold's the worst thing to be long. It just languished during when everyone was making money and with stocks, bonds, other assets, 80s and 90s. The fact that gold is now a bull market, I think is my go-to number, and that's what I watch for. If some government is going to rein in fiscal irresponsibility, I think gold sniffs that first. And until then, yeah, I'm going to trade this like it's still the money printer.
Yep. Agree. Okay. Well, Dill, before we wrap up, do we have any Q&A questions or anything you want to talk about from the audience?
Yeah, we got some Q&A. We got a question from Leet AU, which is the periodic table element for gold. Leet Gold asks, stacking sats. Fees are through the roof. Maybe a chat about this and the future of fees would make for a good chat.
Didn't understand the question. The future of fees?
Yeah, fees right now are through the roof post halving.
Yeah.
What does the future of fees look like? I'll change his question for him. What does the future of fees look like?
No, you know me. That's more of a technical. I think that's better by Jack or Brooke than me. And I don't follow a fee market. I understand it's under a lot of stress right now, but I don't know. Why don't you take that one, Jack?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Like, what's the future? People are going to pay fees for their transactions.
Yeah, but there's concern that it's not working very well. People are paying extraordinary amount of fees, and it shouldn't. Right? Isn't that one of the problems? Is that a block size issue, or is that a layer 2 solution? Or I mean, that's more technical. And again, I'm 4th out of 4 on technicals. So
Yeah.
you and Brooke take that one.
I think Bitcoin's, I disagree with you. I think Bitcoin's working tremendously well. So the way Bitcoin works is no one sets the price of a fee. It's an open market. So you're competing against everyone else that also wants to make a transaction in the blockchain. And so you can either pay higher than the person next to you to get into the blockchain, or you can wait if you don't want to and get into the blockchain later. But that's just the reality of how Bitcoin works. It needs to work that way for technical reasons, or else it would break and fail. And so you have a fee market. And so if you want to make a transaction and you want that transaction to be in the blockchain in 10 minutes and you're paying $1 for that, and someone comes along and pays $1,000, he's going to be first. And you're not going to be in 10 minutes unless you want to pay $1,001. And so it's working really well. The fact that there could be barely any fees and then overnight a cajillion fees. I mean, Bitcoin is unbreakable. So, but that's how it's designed. And my expectation is the more adoption we get.
Now, can you clean up the one thing? I think most everybody understands higher fees raise, quicker to get into the block. But is it possible to put a nominal or, a next to nothing fee and eventually get in? Because it always used to be, right? Wouldn't there always someone would consolidate all the little cheap ones and put them in just to, I don't know, just to benefit, just as a cleanup thing, and not really, even though there really isn't enough of fee incentive to do so?
Yeah. Well, just think about it. So every single time a block is mined, what miners do is they look at all of the existing transactions that want to get into the blockchain, and they say, all right, who's paying me the most to get into the next one? So if you leave a really low fee one and you say, well, hopefully I get it eventually, you're effectively assuming that the line will dwindle all the way down to let you in. But if everyone wants to pay $1,000 to get into the next one in perpetuity for the rest of mankind, then no, you're never going to get in. But you're basically saying, I think that this is a bit of a fad. Something's happening, and I think the line's going to get down, and I'm willing to just get in whenever the line goes down. And that could be a day, it could be a week, it could be a month. But it's kind of just up to the free market. And so Strike, we operate the service where we allow free Bitcoin withdrawals on the blockchain. We have an option, but it just takes a lot more time. So we'll try and get you into the next Bitcoin block. You got to pay a fee for that, obviously. Or if you're willing to wait days, we'll do it for free. And the way we do it is we batch a bunch of transactions that are like, I'm willing to wait a little bit to save the money. And we send them all out at once. And then let's say that the fee market is going crazy and that thing we sent out doesn't look like it's going to get confirmed for days or weeks. We actually resend it out again, maybe a little bit of a higher fee. So your Bitcoin transaction also, once you send it, it's not stuck there forever. You can actually resend the transaction with a different fee or resend it to a different address or something. So it's not as if it's going to be stuck forever. That's not a thing. But yeah, and I don't know, the future, people should plan for a future where everyone in the world's using Bitcoin. So, when people are like, well, this made Bitcoin unusable for me. Well, you should prepare better. Like, I had Lightning channels open. I have a Strike account. Right. It's kind of like, if you prepare yourself to use your dollars, like if someone at a store only accepts debit and credit cards, and you walked out the house without your credit card, you can't get mad at the store. Like, you gotta like equip yourself with the tools to spend the money and prepare. What if the store's cash only? What if the store's credit card only? What if they don't take Visa? I don't know. So just like sign up for stuff, get tools. And so open Lightning channels, download Strike. You can't get mad at the system though. People should prepare for this. This is how Bitcoin works.
Brooke is shaking her head. Yes, she definitely agrees.
Yeah. And just like a quick little TLDR on why we can't raise the block size or try and solve this in a technical way to make things cheaper. Bitcoin, if Bitcoin's a distributed network, and every single piece of information we need to tell the entire network about. So think about that. Every time there's a transaction or a Bitcoin block mined, everyone in the world that wants to know about it needs to know about it. And so we need to put a cap on how much data that actually is. One, because more data travels slower, more data is hard to store, more data is harder to sift through. Right. So you can't have an unbounded amount of data that needs to be passed through. And the reason that it's 10 minutes and not, well, why don't we just make blocks every second so that the line goes through quicker, is because the world needs time to pass the data around and verify it. If it was every single second, then the ordering of our data transfers and our blockchains would be all fucked up. So 10 minutes is enough time to pass around a set amount of data. That's why. So if we limit the size of the data and we target it to 10 minutes, it's enough time to pass around that much data over the internet for us to all get into consensus. So if you make the time shorter or you make the data bigger, you're going to break Bitcoin. So that's the reason we spend all this time working on the Lightning Network. It's not as if we want to work on layer 2s and stuff. We have to. It's the only way to scale it. And so that's just how Bitcoin works if you want it to be censorship resistant and distributed. And it's not as if censorship resistance means, yes, you can make transactions with it that a central party doesn't want you to, but it also means no one can change the monetary policy, right? So everyone's a fan of censorship resistance. Everyone from Michael Saylor to Silk Road drug dealers, everyone likes the fact that this thing cannot be interfered with. And so if we want that, that's just, we have to deal with that. Those things are actually solving for the speed of light. Like, data can actually only travel so fast, and the more data you add, the more you break. Like, those are just physical components. So whenever a shit coin is like, oh, I doubled my block size, well, you violated the speed of light. So that's just science. And so something of yours broke. You just probably shouldn't compare it to Bitcoin. So Bitcoin complies with the speed of light and other realities of physics. So that's just how it works. So get Strike accounts. If you don't want a custodian, if you don't want KYC, all that stuff, you can do everything on your own. Set up Lightning channels. So then when the fees are big, you have different ways, just like debit card, credit card, PayPal accounts. There are different ways to spend your cash. You have different ways to move your Bitcoin around. So just, prepare yourself for the world where Bitcoin is used a lot.
I agree.
Fair enough.
Cool. Any other questions? No? Okay. Shorter episode, but we're going to try and keep these around an hour. I'm a little exhausted. I'm not going to lie. I'm preparing to head to Europe. So a little tired, but this episode was awesome. The dollar bill segments are just, you are the superstar of the show, Dad. All the comments love your opinion on markets and hearing you talk about your experience. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. Lastly, before we go, always leave us comments, always give us feedback. we clearly listen to you guys. Sometimes we talk about certain topics, or we make the episode shorter, or we introduce segments with my dad. We want to have the conversation with you guys. A conversation isn't any fun or isn't worthwhile if it isn't good and healthy and enjoyable for everyone. So we want you guys to enjoy this. So give us feedback. You're not going to hurt our feelings. If you are enjoying it, hit the like or the subscribe or whatever I don't know. There's like a million different platforms now to consume shit. So hit the button that gets this podcast more out into more people's ears, into more Bitcoiners. It expands all of us having this conversation. And let us know what you want us to talk about. And we'll see you next time. Anything I missed, guys? No?
Nope. Huddle on.
Huddle on.
See you next week.